There were 5 of us: Liam, Ben, Sarah, and Chloe. Our mission: to conquer Mount Cinderwood, not via the busy official hiking trail, but via an untouched route, reportedly not even on forest maps. A challenge: to experience ancient nature untouched by human hands. We set off from town in a rented off-road vehicle. The local guide we'd contacted, Old Man Silas, was already waiting at the foot of the mountain. His face was wrinkled, his eyes sharp, and his gaze always fixed on the summit as if he were watching something. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "This mountain has its own guardians. They don't like to be disturbed, especially on untrodden paths." We just laughed, dismissing it as the superstition of old people from remote areas. We were young, enthusiastic, and full of theories about myths that were just empty talk. The journey began. Dense pine forests, the air piercingly cold. Towering redwoods, their canopy of leaves blocked out most of the sunlight. After only an hour of walking, the atmosphere felt different, much quieter. Even the sound of birds was rare. We camped the first night on a small plateau that Old Man Silas had said was the final frontier of civilization. Far below us, the city lights looked like a scattering of upside-down stars. But above us, there was only eternal darkness. That night, something happened. Around 2 a.m., I was awakened by a strange sound. It wasn't the sound of a forest animal. It was the sound of a flute, or pan flute, a very ancient, low, and oppressive melody. The sound seemed to come from beyond the valley, then creep up, surrounding our tent. The melody felt like a lament, a whisper of sorrow from a very, very long time ago. I woke Liam. "Hear that?" I whispered. Liam, who had been grumbling, fell silent when he heard the melody. His face turned pale. "That's not human," he whispered, his eyes widening. The flute stopped for a moment, then came back, this time closer. It felt like someone was walking, playing the flute, around our campsite. We heard footsteps, not human footsteps, too soft, too light, as if something were floating. We all finally woke up. Sarah, Chloe, Ben. Their faces were equally panicked. The flute melody was now playing right outside our tent. Ben, the most skeptical of us, reached for his small machete. "Maybe it's just a random hiker," he said, trying to convince himself. The melody suddenly stopped. There was complete silence, not even the sound of crickets. Then a sound was heard. It wasn't from outside. It was coming from inside our tent. The sound of nails scraping against the tent fabric, right next to Chloe's head, who was sleeping near the tent wall. Chloe screamed, waking up instantly. She shifted away from the tent wall. "What's wrong?" Ben shouted, panicked. "Something scraping against the tent next to my head." We turned on all the flashlights. We looked around the tent, but there was nothing, just the dark forest. In the morning, we examined the wall of the tent where Chloe had slept. In the thick tent fabric, there were 3 distinct vertical scratches. They weren't scratches from twigs. They were too neat, too deep, and ended with sharp nail marks, piercing the tent fabric, causing a slight tear. Liam took the photo. This isn't an animal," he said, his hands trembling. "Animals don't make scratches like this." Old Man Silas, who had come that morning to bring supplies, saw the scratches on the tent. His face darkened, "They told you," he said quietly. "The guardians of this forest don't like modern humans, especially on untouched paths." We continued on. Each step felt heavy, and the forest grew thicker. Giant Douglas fir trees, their roots gripping the ground. Dark green moss covered almost every surface, giving the atmosphere a damp, ancient feel. That afternoon, we discovered something else strange. We were searching for water traces on the edge of a small, nearly dry stream. Liam, who was walking at the front, suddenly stopped. "Look at this," he whispered. In the wet mud on the riverbank, there was a footprint. It wasn't an animal footprint. It was clearly a human footprint, but it was incredibly large. Larger than any man's shoe we'd ever seen. It was also incredibly deep, as if its owner was abnormally heavy. But the strangest thing was, there was only one footprint, one giant footprint. There was no second footprint. It was as if its owner had stepped on one foot, then disappeared. The second night, we camped near a small waterfall surrounded by large, moss-covered boulders. The cold was even worse. Old Man Silas lit a large campfire. He said nothing, but his eyes kept staring out into the dark forest. This time, I didn't sleep soundly. I was awakened by the sound of footsteps. They sounded like a pile of dry leaves being dragged. The sound came from behind our tent, heading toward the waterfall. I opened my eyes and Ben was sitting up. "Hear that?" he whispered. The shuffling sound stopped near the waterfall. And then, there was the sound of gurgling water. Not a normal waterfall sound. This was a sound as if something big was drinking water on the riverbank. The sound of drinking stopped. Then, we heard the sound of shuffling leaves again, this time away from us, disappearing into the deeper forest. I looked toward the waterfall. The faint moonlight filtered through the foliage. On one of the large rocks at the edge of the waterfall, which had previously been dry, there was now a thick, dark, wet moss. The moss formed the shape of a large, clenched hand, as if something very heavy were gripping the rock. I didn't dare approach. I knew we weren't alone. And on this untouched mountain, we were uninvited guests. The morning was chilly, even after sunrise. We packed up quickly, saying nothing about the giant moss grip on the waterfall rock. We all knew the adventure was over. We had to get off Mount Cinderwood. We told Old Man Silas we were going down, and he just nodded slowly. "It's a fast trail," he said, pointing in a different direction than we'd come. "But never stop, never look back." We began our descent, walking quickly through the pine forest. The silence was no longer there. The trees around us, once silent, now seemed to whisper. It wasn't the wind. It was a thin layer of low-pitched sound that rippled in our ears, as if the forest were communicating with us. After about an hour of brisk walking, we felt a little relieved. We saw a patch of light ahead, supposedly the edge of the forest, and the beginning of a gentler trail. However, when we reached the edge of the light, we found no meadow or gentle path. Instead, we found a thick wall of trees, exactly like the one we had just left. We were walking in circles. Ben pulled out his satellite map. "No way," he muttered. "We're going straight. This trail should be heading south." We looked at our compass. The needle was spinning wildly, unable to find magnetic north. This mountain wasn't just untouched. It didn't want us to leave. We decided to take a break and get some water. That's when Chloe suddenly pointed in the direction we'd just come from. "Who's that?" she whispered, her eyes wide. Between the gaps in the towering Douglas fir trees stood a woman. She was wearing a shabby white dress, like a decaying dress, and her long, wet black hair covered most of her face. She didn't move. She just stood there, in the shadows, watching us. "Hey, we're lost!" Liam shouted, trying to be friendly. We panicked and started running, following the path we believed was right. We ran as fast as we could, navigating the gripping roots and slippery rocks. Suddenly, Cinta slipped and fell. I stopped to help her. As I pulled her up, I heard a voice. It came from above us. I looked up. Above the towering canopy of the redwoods, where there should have been only sky, stood a woman standing on one of the thick branches. She was now looking down, right at us. This time, her wet black hair wasn't covering her face. We saw her, clearly. We ran aimlessly. We knew we were surrounded. As we ran, Ben, who was running ahead, suddenly stopped in the middle of the path. He looked down, his face pale. Right in front of him was a single, very fresh, giant footprint, imprinted in the wet mud. It was the same footprint we had seen by the riverbank. Ben looked at the footprint. Then he looked up, toward the foliage. He gasped and screamed, not from fear, but from pain. I watched. Ben's body began to slowly rise into the air. There were no ropes, no hands gripping him. He simply rose, inch by inch, as if held by invisible ropes from above. "Help! Something's pulling me!" he screamed. We tried to grab his feet, but as we touched them, we felt an unbearable cold, as if holding dry ice. Ben's body continued to rise, until his feet disappeared beneath the dark canopy of the trees. We heard only Ben's muffled screams, which gradually mingled with the melody of the ancient flute, which now felt like a triumphant melody. We ran nonstop, leaving our tents, our supplies, and now Ben behind. Somehow, a few hours later, we found a real trail. We ran to the foot of the mountain and managed to contact Old Man Silas. He arrived with a calm expression, as if he knew what had happened. We told him everything: the flute, the giant footprints, and the pale-faced woman who had taken Ben. Old Man Silas just stared up at the dark mountaintop. "That path isn't untouched because it's difficult to pass," he said quietly. "The mountain guardians take what's theirs. They take the people who leave footprints in the mud. I never went back there." We reported it to the authorities, but Ben's body was never found. They claimed he was missing in a climbing accident. We knew the truth. We knew there was something ancient there, thirsty, and responding to the melody of the guardian's flute. I looked at Sarah and Chloe. Their faces were pale, but in their eyes, I saw the same fear. The fear of the sound of the flute, which occasionally sounded in the middle of the night in the bustling city, seemed to ring in our ears. We know, even if we come down from that mountain, it will never let us go.